Johnson. Alderman Beatty. Alderman Fortunati.
Here.
Alderman Gaynor. Here. Alderman Gurman. Here. Alderman Genintasio. Here. Alderman Golden.
Here.
Alderman Grant.
Here.
Alderman Hardiman.
Here.
Alderman Smith.
Here.
Alderman Sutton.
Here.
Alderman Tranquilli. Here. Alderman Vecchiarelli.
Here.
Alderman Vitro.
Here.
Alderman Vitale.
Here.
14.
We have 14. We do have a quorum. At this time, the mayor has a presentation. Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board, Mr. Chairman. Happy April Fools. Tonight is no joking matter. Tonight we have a very special presentation by one of Milford's fine Eagle Scout candidates to be, Marco, who is going to present his story walk. I know that we do have several of the other people that have been cheerleading this project along the way. I saw Chris Angeli, our library director, who is intimately involved in this project and has been one of its strongest champions, as well as some other folks from our community. This is something that I think really is going to set the tone for this portion of the park, and I think I will turn this over now to Marco, who is going to tell us a little bit about what he has in mind for his Eagle Scout project.
If you don't mind me. Thank you. So, hi. My name is Marco Bushauer, and I'm a Life Scout of Troop 1 here in Milford. I am here to request your support for my Eagle Scout project named Story Walk. I've been working on my Eagle Scout project since August, and so far I've raised over $6,400 towards my goal of $8,000. Since I was 4 years old, I have loved to read, and I still love it to this very day. For my Eagle Scout project, I wanted to do something that would allow me to share my love for reading with the city I've lived in for the past 14 years of my life. So, researchers have found that reading increases the average student score in Common Core testing by up to 90% above the average peer, if they would only just read 20 minutes a day, as you can see in the statistics on either side of me. Secondly, I wanted to incorporate exercise into my Eagle Scout project because of my experience in scouting. Ever since I was a tiny kid, I've been a part of Scouts, and
Reflecting 75% of that requested of the city of Milford in the total amount as presented. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any board members have any questions for the probate judge? Alderman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Bev. Judge, since we've gone to this new arrangement where where you've combined Orange and Milford, you just mentioned the breakdown in terms of funding. Does it break down that way in terms of actual caseload of cases that you see? I mean, is it 75% Milford and 25 or whatever the proportions are?
You know, our system really doesn't track it that way, so I don't know. I could probably get some analysis on it. I would expect it's fairly similar. Just the weighted workload of each court prior to the merger that was about 9 years ago, 8.5 years ago, did reflect pretty much a 25-75% split.
Is it based on population initially? Is that really what it is?
The statute is based on a per capita determination, yeah. In terms of this funding, the workload of the court really just depends on the caseload. So there may be some cases that are complex that take more effort from Orange at times and others from Milford. It varies.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board members wishing to ask any questions? Seeing none, Thank you, Judge Beverly.
Thank you for your consideration and for your efforts on the board.
You're very welcome. The next department on your books will be Council on Aging, page 87.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Janice Jackson, Executive Director of the Milford Senior Center. With me tonight is Phyllis Leggett, a bookkeeper. You will be receiving a copy of our April Bulletin and a copy of our programs and services. I'd like to give you some general information about the Senior Center based on the last fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018. We have 41 employees, 4 are full-time and 37 are part-time. We have a total of 12 vehicles and 9 drivers. 1 driver is full-time and 8 are part-time. Our transportation service provided 22,982 rides for our older adults. Last year, we served 30,164 meals in our mini lunch program. Our insurance specialists served 2,272 clients. The Milford Food Bank assisted 2,545 clients with food. 350 people over the age of 55 joined the Milford Senior Center. 3,613 people attended special events at the Senior Center. 1,337 seniors attended our trips. Social Services assisted 7,263 clients with requests for housing, home care, entitlement programs, and assisted living facilities. That is a 5% increase from last year. Our continental breakfast program served 8,347 seniors. That is a 13% increase from last year. Last year, our Meals on Wheels drivers delivered 13,132 meals to elderly and disabled clients in Milford. That is a 19% increase from last year. 25,369 members attended our classes. That is a 23% increase from last year. I'd like to thank all of you very much for all your support. Does anyone have any questions concerning our programs or services?
Alderman Beatty.
Good evening to each of you.
Good evening.
And it is a pleasure. I'm the liaison aldermanic rep to the Council on Aging, along with Representative Alderman Gaynor, and we enjoy every minute of it and are proud of what you do. I don't want to steal the mayor's thunder, but I wanted to talk a little bit about that you're retiring, and thank you for your service for all these years, and maybe we can hear a little bit about that.
Well, thank you very much. This is my 48th year at the Senior Center. Decided to retire June 30th, 2019. And my husband and I live in Milford. We plan to stay in Milford. And we're also members of the Milford Senior Center. And plan on going on some trips. Maybe I'll join an exercise class.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, as you have heard and as you've seen over the last, 48 years, but all the good work that Janice has done on behalf of the Senior Center, we are going to miss her deeply. We know that it's a bittersweet moment because while we're going to miss her professionally, we know that she's going to continue on being a member of the Senior Center, but we also recognize that she is due the good life, and she's going to, I know, enjoy herself in Milford and trips around. So great big congratulations to Janet on her upcoming retirement.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anyone else have any questions for Janice? Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Janice, can you just remind us what the annual cost is for seniors to join the Senior Center?
Yes, if you live in Milford, the annual membership fee is $15 a year. If you live outside of Milford, it's $30 a year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for the director? I know I had the pleasure of being a liaison to your department, Janice, and I want to congratulate you on your retirement and the wonderful job you've done with the seniors in this town. Everyone always brags about it. It's one of the best senior centers in I think it's in the United States now. But thank you very much. You're very welcome.
And thank you for everything that all of you do.
Thank you. Have a good night. Nice to see you too, fellas. The next account on the agenda is the Beth El Center, page 92.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Paradis. I'm the Executive Director of the Beth El Center. I am having a packet passed around. In that packet, you'll find our 2019 operating budget, an analysis that the state of Connecticut does in partnership with some consultants out in California called the Statewide Analytics Project that evaluates the efficiency of our emergency shelter programs, as well as our winter newsletter and a care card that's developed by the United Way of Milford that paints a wonderful long-term success story of one of our employees, Caroline Contreras. It's my hope tonight to just share a little bit with you of the updates that we've made at the Beth El Center over the past year. I'm understanding, and I've worked very closely with many of you over the past year, and so my sense is that you have a sense of a little bit of what we do, but I hope to provide some updates. As you know, the country, the state, and our city has seen an increase, especially amongst the unsheltered homeless population. These are our most vulnerable individuals living with chronic medical, mental health, and substance misuse diagnosis. Many struggle to engage and maintain engagement with systems like treatment and shelter. In 2018, the Greater New Haven region, which is inclusive of Milford, experienced a 113% increase in the unsheltered population. So that shows a little bit of what we are seeing, and that was an analysis done through the point-in-time count, an annual homeless census, if you will. Earlier this year, the Department of Housing and Urban Development confirmed the growth of the unsheltered population across the country. Although overall we're still seeing declining numbers with regards to homelessness amongst sheltered homelessness, the defined chronic homeless, and veteran homelessness. We saw these impacts with encampments like those developed in Fowler Park. Simultaneously, we saw an increase of 10 to 15 individuals per day in our soup kitchen. We also saw a very significant impact on our no-freeze shelter population. Just a little bit of that sense in 2017 to 2018. We saw unduplicated 63 individuals in that program. In our 2018-2019 season, we saw 108 unduplicated individuals in that program. So that just speaks to the increased need. We also saw 128 singles, veterans, and families, so units we would call them, in our 90-day emergency shelter program. Of that was 26 families and 47 children. We continue to see not only an increase in this population, but the complexity of that population as well. That's evidenced by, we do an assessment at every admission, and one of the questions that we ask is, what are the contributing factors to your homeless experience? And over year after year, what we've seen by 10%, 15% is folks identifying substance use, mental health, and lack of access to mental health services, and expenses exceeding income as the three primary contributors to homelessness. And many of these are co-occurring, happening at the same time. With that said, it's been necessary to address the increase with systems that can respond and adapt. And so I'd like to just speak a little bit about what we've done over the past year to not only immediately address some of what we're seeing, but also to build systems that can handle this moving forward. We, in partnership with the City of Milford, Milford Police Department, various nonprofits in the community, including the Milford Public Library, have developed a Milford Homeless Outreach Work Group. That work group has set the charges of community education, data analysis, and direct service as its 3 main charges. And so with that, we do outreach and engagement efforts in the community as a multidisciplinary task force. And that's been quite successful in identifying those folks who are prepared and appropriate for shelter. Probably the most significant update that we've made without increased resources to our operating budget is we brought on a new full-time outreach and engagement coordinator. That individual, she's with us Monday through Friday, 8 to 3, and serves in the Milford Public Library and has been a tremendous partner in that effort. She came online in January, and she's managing a caseload of about 25 already. And so her charge is to really help facilitate folks in getting into emergency shelter, as well as being connected to other resources. And for those folks who are either resistant to shelter or there's other complex issues that need to be addressed, she's working one-on-one with those individuals as well. I just wanted to also mention briefly that we've also partnered with Bridges Healthcare to bring vital resources like the mobile medication-assisted treatment van to Beth El 1 day per week. That's proven to be very successful in addressing some of the substance use issues that we're seeing there, as well as we've had some ongoing conversations with Bridges and Optimus Healthcare to streamline primary health care. And all of this is really to reduce the barriers and limitations for these folks so we can focus on housing stabilization while their basic needs are being met. We're not asking for a funding increase this year. It's stayed the same as last year. It's the City of Milford gratefully provides 12% of our operating budget. And just kind of 2 final points. So number 1 is Beth El Center prioritizes Milford residents in our emergency shelter programs. I think that's important to know because, as many of you know, we do operate in the Greater New Haven Coordinated Access Region, but we do and are able to prioritize Milford residents, and so the unsheltered individuals are our top priority. Secondly, I wanted to just acknowledge that we've been awarded the opportunity to administrate another full-time position, which is a diversion specialist position. The City of Milford did provide us a letter of support in order to administrate that position, and that's it should come online. This is through the CDBG Small Cities funding, and should come online within the next couple of months. And that person will be another mobile full-time person working out in the community on diversion. And what we mean by that is prevention from shelter, if possible, really helping to reduce input and increase output really in our shelter stays. You'll be able to see from the statewide analytics project documents that you all have in your packets that Beth El still continues to be an efficient and effective shelter. They analyze this through a number of variables. It's really quite amazing how they do that work. But essentially what it boils down to is that our length of stays are lower than state averages, which is positive. Our permanent housing exits are higher than state averages, which is positive. And all of this comes into kind of the cost effectiveness of the shelter. And so what that means is statewide averages, it costs about $8,900 to house somebody from shelter admission to exit. In the Greater New Haven area, that number is actually higher. It's about $9,300. Because of our short length of stays and our high permanent housing exits, Beth El is about $3,200. So we're really very, very conscientious that every dollar matters, and we don't take that for granted. We don't know what to expect from state budgets. I was up at Advocacy Days last week for the Reaching Home campaign. We seem to be kind of course, again, on the on the chopping block with this kind of debt diet conversation. So we're hoping to sustain funding there, but as you can see, the need is increasing. We need to ensure that funding is maintained either as is or increased in whatever way we can, and so we continue to do that work. But I thank you for your support, your continued advocacy, and I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you, Jen. So you're saying the average stay at the housing there is about 68 days?
At this time, yeah.
That's pretty quick. I thought it was like a year or so.
Yeah, so I mean, it's an average. So we do have individuals who are extremely disconnected from resources, don't have vital documents, don't have informal supports, really come in with needing absolutely everything. Those tend to be longer length of stays. There is an opportunity to apply for an extension after 90 days. Our families tend to be in that kind of area too, just because there's so much to address and stabilize. But with that, we do have, especially with our partnerships with the VA, we do have a number of folks that come in and stay either 30 days or under. Our goal continues to be 30 days, so we're driving down towards that goal. They have a new database now where we can analyze in live time what our data looks like every day. So you're obsessed with what your numbers look like. It's amazing. But a couple months ago, we actually did hit a 30-day average, which was very exciting. But there's still wait lists, and so it just says to us we continue to do this work and just serve as many as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Ms. Petty. Is this your first budget hearing you've had before us? Was Tony here last year?
She was.
So this is your first year as the budget hearing.
It is.
I just have two questions. One was you mentioned that you're part of the regional arrangement here in terms of services, and yet there is a exception made for Milford residents in terms of eligibility for housing. Do I understand that correctly? If somebody's within the region, if they're from Bridgeport or Stratford or someplace, and all other things needs being equal, somebody with a legitimate Milford residence or a Milford
like orientation.
They're from Milford would get priority.
Yes. So the Coordinated Access Network was developed back in 2015, and it was a system that really tried to regionalize essentially everything. So wait lists at that time, systems at that time, kind of filtered through New Haven and back out to Milford. So I think that there was this kind of understanding that the whole region was just going to serve everybody in the whole region. And that could still be the case. We do see folks who are coming from New Haven or other places simply because we had the open bed potentially, and our wait lists are prioritized in such a way that if we did not have somebody who was prioritized above that, it would happen. But over the course of the years, we've made lots of efforts to talk about client choice, and we obviously know homelessness and shelter are traumatic experiences as is, and so when you uproot families and uproot people from spaces where they're most comfortable, you're doing more damage before you help them. And so we've made that argument over the years, and so that's allowed us to kind of draw back in and prioritize folks as is. So now the wait lists, they function in this kind of smart sheet where there's variables, one of those variables being, is this person local to the shelter region? And that allows us to prioritize individuals from Milford, individuals and families.
And this is, since the majority of your funding comes through the state, they are accepting of that there is a regional preference in terms of availability.
Yeah, it speaks to, it's client choice. That's what the state wants to hear. I mean, we operate under this housing first principles, and that it's reduced or eliminating of shelter barriers. So that being that if I have to go to a shelter that's in an area where I've never been, which could potentially be the experience of somebody in New Haven who's never been out to Milford. It could happen in reverse too. But they've operated through this ideology of housing first, and so with that, they've allowed us to build systems like this. And we're in constant communication with our partners in the Greater New Haven area. I think the Milford Homeless Work Group has had a lot of education over the past couple of months as to the benefits of being part of this regionalization, but still having the flexibility to prioritize and serve the most vulnerable Milford citizens first. And other shelters and homeless service providers are beneficiaries of it as well too. So it works for us.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, one last thing. You know, we whenever Beth El comes before us, and obviously the institution of Beth El is one of the great and one of the things we're most proud of here in the city of Milford for the services that you render to not just your clients, but for the people, the entire population of Milford, and the services that you provide. And we've often talked about how paradoxical it is that when economic times are worse and it's harder to get funding for things is when your needs are greatest. And we used to hear that every year from Tony, and going back to the years after the recession. Now, I don't know whether this, you mentioned it in your opening remarks, it seems as if the needs have become greater again. Although the economy supposedly everything is going well, there are obviously, I don't know if it's anecdotal, but it seems to me in my discussions with the library board that there is more incidence of homelessness, there's more need than there has been in a few years now. Could you just comment on your observations in your position? Is that the case? Is it isolated type of thing, or is it in fact a trend you're seeing here and elsewhere in the state?
We're absolutely seeing in other places across the state and across the country. HUD put out their evaluation of the point-in-time count for 2018 a couple of months ago, and it specifically addressed an increase in unsheltered homelessness across the country and family homelessness across the country. So it is certainly, these are national trends that we're seeing. The idea behind, or I guess the thought behind why we're seeing this, while we're still seeing the trending lines declining amongst homelessness in general, we're still seeing a decline over the past 7 years. We've continued to see year after year those lines trending downward, but the thought is that there's been a lot of very specific coordination around sheltered homelessness, around specific subpopulations of homelessness like veterans and like chronic individuals, and that makes sense because those are the trend lines that we are seeing declining and kind of impacting the overall. But with that, there's been kind of a lack of funding in things like outreach and engagement efforts, and so it's marginalized these individuals that wouldn't normally engage in these systems, wouldn't kind of the self-help model, you know, go and get help for yourself. We've marginalized these folks, and so those numbers have swelled while we've continued to kind of work on this other population of individuals, if that makes sense. So that's, you know, from what because I feel the same way as you do. From what I've studied on this, that's a little bit of what we're seeing. And so I'm hopeful that what that will mean is that the state and that the country will put more investments into outreach and engagement efforts and emergency shelter funding, because this is going to be the first line of support for these individuals, as well as partnerships like working with Bridges and mental health services as well, because these folks who are unsheltered are our most vulnerable, most complex folks. So that's a little bit of what we're seeing. I think we'll know more as we continue to study it, because it's still pretty new.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey, and thanks for your great work at Beth El.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Beth El? Yes. Alderman Gaynor?
Hi, again, thank you so much for all the work that you do. Do you have a sense of what the unsheltered population is in Milford, the number?
I can kind of anecdotally say that because our outreach and engagement coordinator is seeing about 25 individuals now, and through the outreach and engagement efforts that we made to some of the encampments in the area, I would say probably a conservative number, being a little bit high, is probably around 50. that is probably, it's tough to say because this is also a transient population too. We've seen kind of our folks that we've known in the community for a pretty substantially long time, but new faces as well. I would say that kind of conservatively, if that's helpful. Thank you.
Alderman Veccarelli.
Thank you. Good evening. I have a question on the outreach individual that's working out of the library. Would that person, some of the homelessness that we have, would either the people standing on the corners with signs or, they're camping out wherever they could find, are those the people that she would be trying to reach?
Absolutely.
Okay, because some of them may have either alcohol or drug dependencies, and that kind of limits their possibilities of moving in and getting more help than they could, right? Because if they have those and they're not willing to kind of not drink or not take the drugs, and then
Much more difficult.
and so this outreach person, she would then maybe try to work with them and maybe see if she can help them out, and who knows, maybe someday they can get even more help. Am I right? Is that what her job would basically be?
Right. It's kind of a meet them where they're at mentality. We're not going to convince people to do things that we want them to do. We're only going to be able to support and enhance what they want to do for themselves. And so that's a little bit of the work that she's doing, as well as kind of connecting them to whatever resource is kind of their first interest. So whether that be they need to see a physician because they're experiencing frostbite, or something to that degree. She would help them get into that system, build the trust that's necessary to then have a conversation about shelter and some more stable housing. You're correct in that many of the folks that we are seeing have active substance misuse or substance abuse diagnoses. The work of the Milford Homeless Work Group, I think, really speaks to what we're trying to do as a system and as a citywide response. We had an emergency meeting last week because we wanted to make sure that we were kind of staying on top of these folks, and we were able to case conference around some really critical cases and talk about, it's not going to be a matter of convincing them to come in for shelter. That's not, it could be an early win, but it's not a long-term win, right? And so we talked about using interventions like jail diversion to mandate either outpatient or inpatient treatment, because unfortunately, some of this stuff comes with criminal behavior. And we're all accountable for our actions, but we kind of look at it as an opportunity for intervention. The same thing with working with some of our partners at Yale New Haven Hospital. So if folks are frequent flyers in the emergency rooms, we are able to flag them and identify them, hold them in emergency rooms, and then transition them to other short-term housing options, so they're not being discharged from ERs back to the streets. So really trying to kind of not just look at the core system of outreach and engagement and direct kind of shelter work, but the larger systems of where are people entering and exiting this system, and how do we keep them from entering back in, really getting them the help that they need. It's difficult,
Well,
we
thank
work
you.
with people.
That's nice that we have somebody there that's trying to help those people that kind of don't fall into the into what you do with the facilities, but then trying to help them, and so I'm really happy to see that. I wanted to ask you, your trash removal is, like a lot of money, and isn't it something the city doesn't do your trash removal?
No,
No?
we do pay for our own trash removal. We'd welcome to be included in a trash pickup.
Yeah, no, I don't, I don't know why, maybe if we could do that, it might, but anyway, okay, and then I see that your fundraising efforts bring in some money, which is nice. Every little bit helps, but that's greatly appreciated. you know, it seems like you guys do a pretty good job of helping the people that need help. And, you know, I so very often, you know, tell people that I'm proud of Milford and the resources that are available to many of the people that are in need, that we really do try to take care of some of the people that are in need. And so I'm real happy that Milford does this, and I want to thank you for, you know, all of your work. I mean, I guess you have been at the Beth El for a while because you were the director over there of I forget what it was, but
Yes,
so
it's
you're
part
not
of it.
new over there. You've been there for a little while, and you just moved up to kind of. It's nice to see you here this first budget hearing, and I'm glad that you're taking charge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for the Beth El Department? Seeing none, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you for answering all our questions. The next department on our agenda is the Health Department, page 79.
Good evening, everyone. So I usually like to take this opportunity at the budget hearings to just review some of the highlights of the past fiscal year at the Health Department. So you are currently about to get this packet here, which covers the Health Department. So I just want to highlight a few things. On the first chart, you'll see our communicable disease surveillance. So this is where we keep track of all of the communicable diseases that are reportable in the state of Connecticut of Milford residents. So you'll see last year was a really busy year, primarily because it was a severe flu season. So that is reflected in that we definitely had a busier year with 766 cases reported to us. So many of those cases would require, depending on the disease that we're dealing with, follow-up either with the physician, with the patient, or any combination of the two. The other thing I want to highlight on the front is there's a chart towards the bottom that's sort of a maroonish color, and it's titled Steps to Accreditation. I believe last year I spoke to this where nationally public health departments are moving towards voluntary accreditation. Statewide, the State Department of Public Health is really strongly encouraging local health departments and districts to pursue accreditation, which we started on in that process back in 2016. And we really believe that pretty soon a lot of funding from the state level will be tied to whether we are an accredited health department or not. So we have moved along in our process, and we just completed our department strategic plan, which we had never done before. So we have finalized our strategic plan, and we are now moving towards our documentation collection and preparation period. One of the things that I'd like to highlight is, as part of our strategic plan, we met with several key stakeholders throughout the community, whether they were community leaders, general community members, members of the public. We did surveys across the board. And there were some things that came to light, which hopefully I'll be able to share at a future meeting with all of you when we officially unveil the strategic plan, that really talked about the positives of the Milford Health Department, and then things that the community is looking for from us. So, you know, the highlight and that I was pleased to see is that generally the community is pleased and satisfied with the services that we provide and the services that they obtain at the health department. But one of the things that really rose to the top is that they would like to see more. and more in the areas of particularly either health education around issues around chronic disease management, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, things like that. And then they are also looking for more in the area of opioid prevention, and then just additional services that we currently don't provide a whole lot of. And the reason behind that is really a resource issue for us. So kind of a little glimpse into the future, what you will likely be seeing as we pursue the activities identified in our strategic plan is really the search and the advocacy for additional resources for our department to be able to provide the community really what they're telling us they'd like to see from our department, in addition to what we currently provide. As well as, obviously, we're not perfect, so we also are striving to improve our services in whatever way we can and implement some customer satisfaction pieces to really be able to have some data behind the areas that we need to improve and areas that we need to expand on. If you go to the middle of this booklet, you'll see our environmental health division. So this is kind of environmental health by the numbers, so it gives you a lot of statistics around each of the divisions that our environmental health division and our sanitarians cover. So, you know, over the last fiscal year, we issued 765 food service licenses. That includes our annual licenses, of which we have around 378 food service establishments, and our temporary events. So those are all the community events that involve food where we do inspections. We continue to do the anti-blight code enforcement, as well as tomorrow, hopefully you'll see some media pick up on our mosquito control kickoff for the season, and then all the other things that the Environmental Health Division does. And then on the back, I've highlighted our school nursing and our public health nursing division. So our nurses are definitely continue to be very busy with approximately 45,000 health office visits at the schools, close to 16,000 medications and treatments administered throughout the last fiscal year, and over 40% of Milford students having a health condition requiring management by a school nurse. That number, in previous years when I've been here, that number has hovered probably when I first started coming to these meetings as a deputy director, we were around the 25% range. In recent years, we've been around 35%, so that number continues to increase of students really needing management on some level by the nurse for a health condition in the schools. And then there's some information about our public health nursing immunization clinics that we hold every month, over 1,000 flu shots administered, and then our oral health program at the schools as well. So as far as the budget goes, we have remained fairly flat, so I'll take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to Deepa. Can you expand on that? So 40% of the students have a health condition. Is that kids that are on medications or prescriptions or just?
It's a mix of students. It can be anything from students with food allergies, which is really a big population that has increased over the years. It can be tube feedings. It can be asthmatics, diabetics. So it's a variety of things that they're seeing in the schools.
Alderman Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Director Joseph. So you had mentioned that the community would like to see some additional programs, and I absolutely agree. A lot of things you're talking about with chronic diseases and diabetes could absolutely be addressed with lifestyle changes and nutritional education. So it'd be extremely important to see that come in a much broader scale. But the question that I have is actually about the accreditation. I noticed some of the next steps are really just submitting forms, finalizing everything, I should say. It seems like all the hard work has been done. Do you have a timeline of when you think it might be completed?
So I would love it if it could be just pulling together forms. The documentation collection and preparation area, there are a lot of things that we are required to have, some of which we don't have formalized, particularly standard operating procedures for everything that we do that crosses the 10 essential services of public health. As well as, one of the big things that we need to have in place is a performance management system and quality improvement plan, which we're currently working on. But the performance management system, we need to be able to demonstrate that we regularly monitor performance of our staff and our employees, and then we have some formalized process for evaluation. And so we do not have anything in place for that in a formal manner. We do have a piece of that for specifically environmental health and our food service inspections. We do periodically audit that and really we just focused on focused food inspections and looking at standardizing how sanitariums are doing those. But we will need some time to develop that system. So we are hoping, I'd say within a year, to be able to push the button. But there is also a cost associated with accreditation, which I haven't quite figured that part out yet, but it's approximately $25,000 to apply for accreditation. So that could be coming soon to a theater near you as well.
Any more questions for the Health Department? Alderman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Joseph, what's the measles situation in Milford, specifically Milford schools? And we hear on the news about the immunization, resistance to it, and so forth. What's going on in Milford as far as measles?
Thankfully, I'm happy to report within the Milford Public School System, our immunization rate is approximately 98%, which is very high. So that's a really good thing. With this current measles outbreak that really has been on the health department's radar for a year or two, what we do right now is we're monitoring the situation. We are notified if there are any contacts of potential measles cases, and then we follow those contacts to make sure that either they're isolating as they're supposed to, and also to look at immunization status as well. We've also taken this, I'm going to call it an opportunity, to follow up with those individuals within our school system who are not immunized, to just send out a reminder of the policy should there be a measles case, and what the isolation requirements would be, as well as encouraging them to get immunized if they haven't been already.
Alderman Beccarelli.
Thank you. I have just one question. The communicable disease surveillance, I noticed that there's, in the last two reporting, February of 2018 and January of 2018, just quite a spike there, and I'm wondering if you might be able to tell me why.
Those were predominantly influenza cases from last season, from having a very, very tough flu season last year.
Mm-hmm. Any more questions? Alderman Gurman.
Mr. Chairman, one more. So you have this program, Healthy Homes Assessments. How does someone participate in that, and you think that has something to do with the 40% of the students that have the health issues?
So our Healthy Homes program is it's funded through a grant from the state of Connecticut, and we're currently applying for the next 3-year round of funding. Through that funding, we have a sanitarian go out with our case manager to homes, and it can be either you can request it. We often will pair it with if we've had complaints regarding a home, or if we have tenants who are complaining regarding their unit, we will do a Healthy Homes assessment. So it comes both ways, complaint driven and then self-referrals. So we go out and our sanitarians as well as our case manager are trained Healthy Homes Associates, so they're certified to be able to evaluate homes for air quality, mold, and a number of other things. So, and then they provide recommendations for remediation as well.
Thank you. Any more questions pertaining to the health department? Seeing none, we'll move on to health services, DNA, page 91. Does anyone have any questions pertaining to health services? I don't see any. We'll move on to education, health services, school nurses, page 95. Anyone having any questions pertaining to education, health services, school nurses? Seeing none, we'll move on to Department, Human Services Department, page 90.
So the Department of Human Services, so that is the sort of one-pager that you have in addition to that booklet we just covered. So on the front, it covers the Human Services outreach portion of the department and just gives an overview of, again, some of our statistics over the past fiscal year. So we have 2 community outreach workers within the division, and they work on several different programs within the community. They do general outreach with individuals and families in the community, and you can see last fiscal year there were 263 cases that covered a total of 683 individuals. Often the work of the outreach workers is to coordinate services, provide referrals, and then provide assistance as we're able through our funding. One of our two of our major programs that the department runs are the Energy Assistance Program, which has just ended or is just about to end on May 1st. As well as our Renters Rebate Program, which kicks in on May 1st as well. So Energy Assistance, we are an intake site for TEAM Incorporated. So 2 days a week, we have staff members from TEAM who come to Milford Department of Human Services to take energy assistance applications. Our outreach workers are also trained to be able to take applications for residents who may not be able to make it when TEAM staff is in the building. And then Renters Rebate, again, we kicked that program off in May, and our outreach workers go to all of the senior and disabled housing sites throughout Milford and take applications there, as well as take appointments for other individuals at our office. We also provide some level of financial assistance and really partner very closely with approximately 4 other community agencies within town: the Salvation Army, St. Mary's Church, United Way, Kids Count of Milford, and we work to be able to provide emergency assistance for families that may come in the form of utility assistance, residents who may be facing a utility shutoff notice, rent mortgage assistance, as well as food voucher assistance, and along with referrals to existing programs as well. We do have grant funds that support all of those programs as well. So we have funds through the Emergency Food and Shelter Program of the United Way, as well as Community Development Block Grant funding that we're able to utilize as well. On the back, so on the kind of blue side, is the Youth and Family Services portion of the department. So we have a program coordinator and a clinical coordinator in that division. And this, again, this is last fiscal year, so we haven't had a clinical coordinator in place. So we have really been partnering with Bridges and other community organizations to be able to refer individuals who are looking for therapy services, and then we have been working closely with Milford Public Schools for those students who were utilizing our services to make sure that we're addressing their needs as we can in the interim. And then on the bottom is some of our programming that we've done. We have the Mayor's Youth Award event coming up on April 30th, and then several other programs. We've been trying to, again, work really closely with Milford Public Schools. They have been seeing increases in behavioral issues at the younger age levels, so, pre-K, kindergarten, students coming in with some, significant issues, and they're looking for programming to assist with that, particularly for families, to be able to really understand how to maybe address some of these issues prior to the students entering school, so kind of that birth to 5 age range. So we're really trying to develop some programming around that, and we partnered with the public schools about 3 weeks ago to do a program over at Harborside focused on anxiety and depression, because those are some of the issues that are being seen in the schools. So really, overall at Human Services, one of my goals has really been to try to increase the community partnerships between our agency and the other partners in town that really we should be working with, and sort of leveraging our strengths to work together. The Homeless Outreach Work Group is an example of that, as well as we have staff members participating in that too. So, any questions?
Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, people. It was very interesting. You just indicated the fact that between birth and 5, kids are coming in more in stress, or with more problems. Do we find it in developmental problems or emotional problems? Do we know where that skew flying is?
I'd say it's a little bit of both, but definitely I think what we're hearing from school administration is really in the areas of social emotional issues, and again, a lot of focus on anxiety and depression and stress and how to cope with stress. Some parents are also, and this is an area that we're going to look at for programming, some parents are also saying that they've maybe noticed some things when the children were younger and have brought it to perhaps their pediatrician's attention, and it's been thought of as maybe this is just developmental, age-related, and they'll grow out of it. But what we're finding is that that's not always happening. So we're also looking to partner closely with some of our local providers to talk about how do we better identify some of these issues and tease out a bit more of what is developmentally appropriate, and then what are those cases where something else might be going on.
So the fact remains that these kids are coming in with more problems between the age birth and 5, coming into kindergarten, or not even kindergarten, they're going to preschool. The preschools are dealing with this, and so it's pushing it off to the public schools, and so the parental. So the one main factor here between birth and whenever they go to preschool, 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
1,
Pre.
6 weeks old. So it's parental stress and parental kind of issues. So are we dealing with the parents?
Yes, that's part of the goal is to have a family-centric approach, looking at what are some strategies that are going to assist parents. So actually that forum that was held 3 weeks ago was really targeted towards parents and providing some strategies to parents as to how to deal with it if you're in it right now with older children, or how to identify it if you're in it with younger kids. The other thing is that this is also very much a focus of the early childhood centers in town. So Kids Count in Milford, the Family Resource Center, have really taken a focus on doing some professional development around that issue as well, to try to, again, the goal is to try to arm as many providers that are going to enter that family's life in that birth to 5 range, to try to curb what happens when they get to school age.
Interesting enough, as far as data is concerned, is it more problematic with one-child families or multiple-child families? Is that more prevalent in multiple-child families, that younger kids are coming in more stressed out?
I don't know the answer to that offhand, but I can look into that and see what we're seeing.
Thank you. It'd be interesting to see what that data says.
Any more questions pertaining to the Human Services Department? Seeing none, thank you, Deepa. Thank you for answering all our questions, and thank you for the great work you're doing for the city of Milford.
Thank you very much to all of you.
Next departmental on our agenda is Management Information Systems, MIS, page 39.
Good evening. I'm extremely new to the city, so this is my first time addressing you. I am Adam Heller, the interim MIS manager. I've been on board since December. So I have become familiar with the budget over time, as well as working with all the various departments and understanding what their needs are, and understanding how technology is used in the city to serve the citizens. With that, I've been working on various projects that existed to finalize them, as well as look forward to how we can help the departments better serve the community. And through that, met with several departments, and we're coming up with plans for the mayor's office to do just that. Not quite sure what to expect, having been new, so I don't know what other information you'd be looking for. I'm certainly answer any questions about the budget. There is no change to the budget this year. Aye.
Anyone have any questions pertaining to the MIS department? Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
How is your staffing? Are you staffed properly, understaffed, overstaffed?
We are a bit on the understaffed side. Something we've been working with our finance director and our mayor to resolve, and I think we have some adjustments in staffing without actually modifying the budget this year to help at least alleviate some of the work or the backlog that we have, but we are currently understaffed.
And Mr. Chairman, I do want to compliment Adam Heller, who has really hit the ground running in his first several months on the job. Again, he came in with big shoes to fill just because we have a complex, complicated IT services that we offer here in the city to serve our needs for public safety, for the other services that the city provides. And it is a complex system that we have in place, and he has hit the ground running. One, being essential to our financial conversion that we're currently in the process of undergoing. It is a very difficult task, and he's done a great job. There are some adjustments, even though there are no new net positions. You'll see in the budget there are several changes, several job titles that are shifted. I know that we did mention that there is going to be a new way to deal with payroll, even though it is the MIS departments in IT. They have always had a large role in our payroll processing, and they will continue with several of the positions that got transferred over to our finance department. So you'll see that transition in the finance department. As you know, we've always had 2 GIS personnel. One of those GIS personnel is shifting over to be more of a IT resource manager to help support the 500 desktops that we have on the city side.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does anyone have any? Oh, Alderman Beatty.
Hello and welcome. You asked us a question. You said you didn't know what to expect. I, for one, thank you in advance. I understand that it's a temporary position in a department that's in flux, but in the very best sense of that. And so I think, for me, the aldermen are looking to be in a strategic alliance with whatever happens and how that department morphs and serves the city better, including all the personnel and the residents of the city. So that's 2 cents to say we welcome some of the changes, respect that you're tolerating a time of flux and wish it well. And it's good to hear from the mayor that those changes are occurring.
Well, thank you very much, and I look forward to working with the departments and finding out how they can use technology in a more efficient manner, looking more for an enterprise-wide solution rather than departmental specific and siloed solutions. So the strategic plan would be in the long term, a more mobile workforce, a more flexible workforce, a more efficient workforce, and one that uses systems whenever we can, the same system across multiple departments wherever there's overlap. So, thank you.
Alderman Vecchiarelli.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
I was wondering on personal services, 514112 overtime. You know, it looks as though it was budgeted for the 2017-18 3,300, and well, what I'm asking is, you've asked for $2,000, but then like last year it was maybe projected about 6,000. So why such, you know, what was going on where we needed that much overtime and we don't need it now?
Sure. Well, as the mayor pointed out, MIS has been working the payroll system for a number of years, and it's transitioning now. Currently, the payroll personnel are still in MIS, and they're running two systems at this point. They're still running the legacy system of New World, and then they're running the new system of Munis at the same time. So it requires a lot of extra time on their part to have to run two separate payroll systems, and that's going to be winding down. So in the next budget year, I don't anticipate the need to continue with that level of service from the payroll personnel.
Okay, thank you. And then one other thing, do you believe that the Russians are interfering with our elections here in Milford?
I am sure we're doing everything we can to prevent anybody from interfering.
Any more questions regarding the MIS department? I don't see any. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Adam, and thank you for jumping in, like the mayor said, with both feet running and doing the job you're doing for the city. Next department is going to be Department of Permitting and Land Use, page 27.
Good evening. I'm Joe Griffith, the Director of Permitting and Land Use. I'm here representing our offices, the Inland Wetlands Agency, the Planning and Zoning Office, as well as the Building Inspection Division. Presenting here our 2019-2020 budget. Please be patient with me as I go through our electronics here, but I think I've got it. Our budget this year is proposed to be, at $1.063 million. This represents a $2,300 increase, or decrease, excuse me, in our current budget, which was approved at $1,066,000. Our budget it actually increases with salaries due to a Clerk A increase, but then our operational budgets are reduced by $3,700 from last year. As with previous years, what we've been doing is consolidating our operational expenses from the individual offices, building department, planning and zoning, inland wetlands, and consolidating a lot of those, several of those under the DPLU budget. What this does is it allows us to just get a better control over the actual expenses, and I think we've also recognized some, realized some efficiencies. Where appropriate, we have continued to budget separately for the individual offices, such as the gas for the individual vehicles, the big expense, which is the advertising costs for the individual boards. We're still tracking those separately and budgeting those separately. Our revenues that we've been generating for the past year is consistent with previous years. This year we're projecting at about $95 million in construction value, and the revenues that those are generating are about $1.1 million. And again, I think this coming year is consistent with those projections. What we have done, as I indicated to you last year, is instituted a consistent way of assessing and evaluating the cost of construction. It's based on a national index. So specifically for single-family residences, when an applicant comes in, they are essentially not allowed to lowball their number anymore. We're requiring, if they don't at least hit that minimum national index, they are then required to come in with substantial cost breakdowns to justify their proposed expenses. I'd like to note specifically, not in this year's budget, and we do anticipate the cost of purchasing new permitting software. And we would intend to come to this board, as well as the Board of Finance, separately when we have a proposal. But specifically as of June 30th, 2020, the permitting software that we're now using, View Permit, which was purchased back in 2010, is going to no longer be supported by our, whatever they are, the suppliers. As such, we are forced to make our decision now to look around at other permitting software and evaluate it, and then get it implemented within the next, specifically 14 months. Also in this coming year, what we'll be initiating is our Plan of Conservation and Development. In 2022, by state statute, we'll be required to publish and accept and adopt a Plan of Conservation and Development. So 2022 seems like a long way off, but it's a rather lengthy process, and I really do want to make sure that we are engaging the public, engaging various offices and departments, and making this over the coming 2 years, a really, I guess, a robust intake of information and the desires of the public. We're continuing to further implement our utilization of technology, not just with our permitting software, but with other aspects. In our current year, we've specifically included our online permitting to take in and issue permits online for solar collectors for both residential and commercial uses, and that has significantly reduced just the public coming into the office, and thereby reduce the waiting times for our for the people who are there for additions, alterations, and what have you. In this past year, working with Human Resources, we were trying to fill a position that was, I think you recall last year, one of our building officials, Rack Leeson, passed away, and we still have not filled that position. We went through an interview process, looked at a number of candidates. The one candidate that we wanted to offer the position to opted to take another job, and so in another city. and we chose to not pursue the other candidates. So what we're looking to do is engage any building official or any number of building officials through our temporary seasonal help line items. But specifically, we are going to have to fill that position because we just received word in the past week that one of our other building officials is planning to retire on June 30th. So we are going to have to fill some positions there. Also in the past year, we've been working with personnel from Emergency Management Services have been working on our community rating system. And I bring this up to you because it entailed an enormous amount of time and effort to get the documentation pulled together that through the community rating system could afford our citizens that are in the floodplain discounts on their flood insurance premiums. As I said, I'm bringing this to your attention because it really does what we found in the past 2 years in pulling this report together is the, let's say, the deficiencies in our current database, the permitting software in which we're collecting the information that's necessary to report for this community rating system. There's a lot of holes in it, and so as a result, we spent a lot of time manually going through files, we had spreadsheets with 600 addresses in which we had to go through line by line by line to input additional data with. And again, if we had the permitting software that would anticipate doing this report, which is scheduled to be done again in another 5 years, I think we would be able to do it much more efficiently, much more rapidly, and frankly, be able to put the time into our regular positions, our regular jobs, that being inland wetlands, zoning, building officials. We continue to expand the use of our technology, and that's leading to increased efficiencies. As we did last year, building officials are still utilizing these tablets to go out on their inspections. They allow us to electronically record their inspections and generate the inspection reports, send them out by email directly to the contractor, the applicants, the subcontractors, as well as the owners, and specifically back to our office for further review if necessary. Just briefly wrap it up with our staffing objectives. We're looking to, we obviously have to fill our a building inspector, both the current vacancy and what we anticipate is going to be another vacancy in June. As far as our operational objectives, we're continuing to try to just basically improve the efficiency in getting the permits, the applications brought in, increasing use of electronics again to generate electronic plan reviews, and then in turn respond to the permit applications and generate the permits. I guess I'll leave it there. Any questions that I can answer?
Yeah, this isn't a question. This is certainly a compliment, actually. I've been living in Milford I've been in the construction business for 45 years, Joe, and all of those years are spent in Milford. And there was a while there where I think I was going to change my occupation. It was really trying at times. But you have definitely brought it up to a level where expeditiously it is a pleasure to work for the building department in the city of Milford at this time. And I just want to compliment you and your staff to make that happen. That's what I just want to have to say that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, Alderman Beatty.
When I was new to, good evening, thank you. But it was about 4 years ago, and I heard the war stories about your office and how it had improved, and specifically your good name. And then I had interactions in that first year, and you were very helpful to me. I don't know whether you remember that when I was trying to learn the ropes of who was who and what was what in all those areas of the department you mentioned that are interrelated. So thank you to you personally. But we don't want to go backwards, so I know that the mayor and the finance board and human resources are on top of it, but what would, how to step up those two positions then? For the anticipatory one that's not yet vacated June 30th, and the other one to make that happen as soon as possible. Is there anything that needs to be done or that would be within our realm to help?
As I indicated, we went through a rather thorough search to fill this position, and I think there's a combination of clearly salaries are a consideration when somebody is looking to accept or reject an offer from us. But I think more specifically, we really need to throw a broader net to see what kind of talent is out there in terms of available help. I mean, the role of the building inspector has always, or the background of the building inspector has always been, the retired electrician, the retired plumber, the retired contractor, what have you, who then gets into the code enforcement. But I think we really do need to, as best we can, and obviously it's defined by state statute in terms of what's, who's able to serve as a building official, but broaden our job description to allow for, like I said, a broader net to get a wider range of applicants to come in.
The matter of advertising to in a broader area, broader professional.
No, I don't think so. I know that what we do is, in addition to sending out the public notices and the advertisements, but our real main way of getting the word out is through the office of the state building inspector, who's got a mass emailing that'll go out to every building official, assistant building official, or any candidate. So I think it's just a question of our making sure that we're keeping our job description general enough that we can take in a broad range of candidates, but then still make sure that they're meeting our minimum qualifications.
Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Joe. Just a couple of questions. You had alluded to the new permitting software. Any idea the range of expenditure on that?
Yes. We've looked at several products, several that are out there, and there are probably, I'm not going to say hundreds, but 20 or 30 products out there. We've looked at a number of them based on recommendations from other municipalities, who's been working in Connecticut as well as in New England. And I guess I'm convinced that they all are able to do the same thing, depending on how we define what we want that product to do. The big variable, as we're looking at the range between, and let's literally $70,000 to $270,000, is what we're purchasing in terms of the implementation. And I've seen various vendors come in with very detailed descriptions as to what that implementation provides for. And so when we look at a product that is $60,000 or $70,000, we are throwing on an allowance for ourselves just so that we can be carrying additional implementation costs. I don't believe that those are the right numbers for what we're going to be asking this software company to assist us in doing. So. Mm-hmm. Wireless, no. All of those wireless services are covered under cell phone expenses now, and so that's I guess a legacy from when we had the different departments, and they would have their different budgets, and certain departments had wireless services to pay for their cell phones, and other departments had cell phones to pay for their cell phones.
Cell phones are paid for, so that's
the cell phones are carrying that entire line item, yes.
A line item in the future can no longer exist. Blueprints? What do you mean by blueprints with zero?
typically we're not seeing too much of that as a direct expense anymore either. It's again, but when we, yeah, typically what's happening now is if we need to make the copies, we're not taking Mylar sheets and, although we do have Mylar sheets and running down to the blueprint company. What we are doing is we're going down to the engineering and scanning them, and we're making digital copies. But we seldom need additional paper copies. If we do need the additional paper copies, we're telling the applicant, go provide them.
Right, I thought the applicant had to produce X number of copies, X
Yes.
number of copies.
Yes.
So those are no longer gonna be any costs as far as wireless and blueprints, because you're under duplicating or digital photography anyway, right?
Right, so I don't want to say the expense has gone away, but typically what we've done is we've aligned it with a more active account.
Thank you.
Alderman Vecchiarelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening.
Good evening.
You're probably the only department that brings in more money than they spend. Now, in permitting, you're saying that you're going to be, how much money are you taking in, you think, this year for permitting?
I don't want to try to be too exact with this, because the variables in terms of, for instance, our redevelopment, our reconstruction over there at the Howard Johnson's lot there on Cherry Street and Post Road. We should presumably have the permit fees coming in the next 2 weeks, month type of thing. However, the applicant, and again, it's with our consent and our encouragement, the applicant has chosen to take out a foundation permit, which would essentially defer the fees until they get the actual building permit. So whatever that fee represents, it's now probably going to show up in the following fiscal year, and that's an example of, but again, a big project that we're handling, and so are we taking in $90 million of construction cost versus $100 million of construction cost? I don't want to be too specific, I guess. I think that would be dangerous.
Well, if you had to guess, how much money do you think the city's going to collect for this fiscal year?
I think I was showing 1.1 million in fees.
Well, that's more than your total budget for permitting and land use.
Yes.
So it's nice. The thing that I wanted to ask was the computer software maintenance, which would be 574796 computer software maintenance.
Yes.
You've put in for $35,000, and yet the mayor and the Board of Finance has basically put $1 there. Could you give me some explanation about that?
Yes, that's what I was referring to with our permitting software, and that $35,000 was representing what we would anticipate is going to be an annual cost for that permitting software. So that's where I thought to get that as a placeholder. With the discussions with the mayor and Mr. Ardisi, that we thought it better to take the entire, whatever permitting software we choose and want to present to the Board of Finance and to the Board of Aldermen, to include that $35,000, or whatever it winds up being in terms of the annual maintenance fees.
So you're not gonna, you can get away without that for this budget period, and then the next one you may need 70 or 80,000. Is that what I'm hearing?
At some point during the course of this year, and I hope it will be in this fiscal year as opposed to next fiscal year, just because we are under a tight timeline, but we're going to be coming to this board and the Board of Finance to present a proposal or proposals for permitting software that will include purchase price, the implementation costs, as well as the first year of annual fees.
Any more questions pertaining to Alderman Gurman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to Joe. Thank you. Can you expand a little bit on the conservation and development plan for 2022? And is that, you said that was required, and have we done something in the past?
Yes. Right now, we've been working with the 2012 Plan of Conservation and Development, and that is prescribed by state statute. Every 10 years, a municipality is going to develop and adopt a Plan of Conservation and Development. Without getting too deep into the weeds, as the name implies, it's looking at the broader intent for the land use of, the city of Milford. Those recommendations, that plan, becomes the basis for how we change and amend our zoning regulations. So it becomes a guideline for our zoning regulations. It'll look at the various zones, talk about what we want to see in terms of densities in those zones, and then that plan would be reflected presumably in our zoning regulations. And so that's where I would like to see, working with our Planning and Zoning Commission, a very I guess, vibrant exchange with the public, with other departments, with boards, and just see how usable a document we can come out of this with in 2022.
Any more questions for the Department of Land Use? Seeing none, we're going to move on to Zoning Board of Appeals, page 29.
I'm here representing the Zoning Board of Appeals also. I believe we've held to our numbers, which primarily consists of the advertising budget. We're using that to, as required by law, post our public notices for any of the Zoning Board of Appeals meetings. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions pertaining to Zoning Board of Appeals? Hearing none, we'll move on to the, oh, that's it for you, Joe. Thank you very much for answering all our questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the great job you're doing for the city of Milford. The next department on the agenda is the Finance Department, page 37.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the members of the Board of Aldermen. We have two of our division heads here tonight. The other division heads send their respectful regrets they could not be here tonight, but I'm very grateful to have Mary Ann Klinga and Corey Gumbrowitz. You may know Mary Ann Klinga as our tax collector. She is currently serving as the acting treasurer since our previous treasurer, Michael Antonicelli, left the city in January. I'm grateful to have Mary Ann's help in the Treasury Division, and she's been a tremendous resource in not only helping Treasury, but also with the Munis payroll conversion project. Corey Gumbrowitz serves as the Deputy Tax Collector, but he's also been promoted to acting tax collector, and the two of them, going back to their work together in the tax department, if you will, have done a tremendous job, not only building on the foundation of the tax department, but working with the staff to make enhancements, enhancements to collection of revenue via credit cards at the front counter. And after I finish my remarks, I will give them an opportunity if they'd like to make any comments and highlight their achievements in their respective areas. But I'd like to thank them both for stepping up and helping the finance department in tremendous ways to keep our operations seamless and moving forward in spite of the challenge of turnover, primarily due to retirements, as I've talked to the board in prior discussions. The trend continues each year in finance, where we have lost people, again, due to retirements for the most part. And that's a tremendous challenge. A challenge when we have to continue to meet our obligations on a day-to-day basis, on a yearly basis, but also because this has been a transformative year for the finance department with the Munis Financial Conversion Project. I'm pleased to report to the board that the city went live with Munis on the financial system in July of 2018, and we have been making great progress with each passing day, with each passing month and quarter. We continue to work with the departments to utilize the system, and everyone has been tremendously supportive. I'd like to thank the Board of Aldermen, the Board of Finance, and all the members of the city departments who have been supportive, working as a team with our department to implement this system. I'd like to offer a sincere thank you in particular to the excellent staff that I have in the finance department, all of the divisions who have really helped with this project tremendously, and also our partners in the Human Resources Department and in MIS. The challenge continues because we have been working almost simultaneously on the payroll HR part of the project. We are on the cusp of going live with that. We plan for that for July 1st rather of 2019, and the team has been working very hard and putting in a lot of time and effort to make this happen. You heard Adam Heller, our acting IT manager, mention how we're running parallel systems, and that has intensified as we get closer to go live for payroll, in that we have to run the payroll on the legacy AS400 system, but also run it in Munis so that we can do parallel testing, and that takes a lot of effort and is very difficult. There have been enhancements to the way we do things in finance as a result of the new system. It has forced us to look at all of our processes from the ground up, and we have been gradually working with the staff and with the city departments to enhance our procedures, and that will continue as we work with Munis. And as the mayor mentioned, and as we alluded to earlier, it has also provided the impetus or the need to reorganize, in particular, the payroll area, the payroll division. So we are moving 2 positions. One of those positions happens to be part-time, moving those positions out of MIS into finance so that we can organize a dedicated, focused payroll unit that can work closely with this state-of-the-art system, with the challenge of today's modern-day payroll, which continues to become difficult with the Affordable Care Act, with new regulations, et cetera, and also the need for payroll to work in conjunction with HR with the Munis system, because the Munis system has a way of working closely with onboarding employees through HR and then keeping that division of duties between payroll and HR separate for internal control purposes, but also ensuring that the staff is giving it enough attention to serve the area well and also serve our employees well in terms of payroll. The budget, all in all, as we do each year, is relatively flat, and we appreciate the board's support. And I'll open it up to any comments that Corey and Marianne may have, and then afterwards we can entertain questions. Thank you very much.
Anyone have any questions pertaining to the finance department? You wanted to introduce yourself and come to a little presentation, or you want to just open it up for questions? Sure. Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess to Peter. So at what stage are we now in the Munis system? Are we 90% there, 80% there?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Gurman, I would say with the financial system, we're roughly 85, 90% there. We still are working on the fixed assets portion on the financial side, and also data analytics and reporting. We need additional training with Munis, which we've set up for mid-June, with power users within finance and some of the city departments, and that'll enable us to learn how to do custom reporting. So those are two key areas. We also have to work on the enterprise document management system phase of the project, and we plan to kick that off after payroll is completed. So again, with financial, I would say we're about 85 to 90% complete, but with HR payroll, we still have not gone live with that. We've been busy with the conversion work, which started in earnest in the spring of last year in 2018 and continues until this very day. And again, we plan to go live on July 1st. We have a soft go live planned for May 6th. And looking at the results of that should give us a sense of confidence and comfort about the July 1st go live. And so I look forward to that. And once that's done, I would say all in all, that would mark the significant completion of the conversion project, minus the fixed assets and the reporting and enterprise document management components that I referred to. But I'll also add just quickly that the Munis system, as we said, is state of the art. So there are a lot of features that are there that we also want to utilize, but that will require further training and use of the system. So it's the gift that keeps on giving, if you will, to use that expression, that yes, you go live, you flip the switch, it's a great milestone, but it's an ongoing process as we go forward with the system. And especially as we bring on new employees due to turnover, we'll continue that training and also work with the department so that they can utilize the system more. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for that presentation. Alderman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Peter, you might have touched on this, but looking at the finance department, the department request versus the mayor and the finance board's recommendations, the difference of about $45,000 is accounted for in revaluation operations. You requested $86,000. The mayor and the board of finance agreed to $45,000. Could you explain what revaluation operations are and why that shortfall?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, as you know, we complete our revaluation, I believe, every 5 years, and it's done in-house. But historically, we have smoothed the process of funding the Fund 40 reval account, which helps to support the expenses of the revaluation. And the city assessor tries, of course, to get increased funding to increase that reserve a little bit more. But sometimes, as you can imagine, with the challenges of each budget year, it's not always possible to get the full request. So we work with Assessor Dan Thomas to bring it down to keep it relatively flat compared to prior years, and do our best to be prudent with the reserve to allow it to go as far as it can. But sometimes we have to make, for example, purchases out of the reserve. In a prior year, we had to buy a server for the Vision software, and occasionally there are upgrades to the software. I know I spoke with Dan recently, and there is a required upgrade that is needed now, and we will tap into the reserve to fund that. So again, we have that reserve, and that it is used for the reval that's done every 5 years.
Thank you, Peter. Any more questions for the Finance Department? I see none. Thank you very much for your presentation. And Peter, with your great answers and explanations. The next department on the agenda is Registrar of Voters. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'll have the Board of Assessment Appeals after you. Go ahead. No, they're not here anyways.
Okay. Good plan. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, everyone. Thank you guys for being here. I don't know how you do it. Have to listen to all this, but shake it up a little bit. Hope you won't be glazed over. I'm Deborah Fellenbaum, the Republican Registrar of Voters. With me is Carrie Rowland, the Democratic Registrar of Voters, and we're here to represent the Registrar of Voters office and, you know, shout out to our parties here. But every once in a while we get a question from a voter. They say, what about me? I'm an unaffiliated voter. Who represents me? So I quickly tell them that we both do, and our office does. Shout out to our office staff as well. We try to stay nonpartisan in all that we do when the voter comes in. And of course, we're all about registrations and open and fair elections, and having the trust of our voters, and having your trust that we're going to spend our money wisely. And I'm going to turn it over to Carrie, though, because she has some words about upcoming expenses in the future.
Thank you, Deborah. Good evening, everybody. I want to talk briefly about what to expect in this coming budget. I want to remind you that we have our municipal election in November, and we also have the April presidential preference primary following that, which will also be in the budget. So we feel that we are very lean on our requests, and when we talk about the election budget, I feel the same way about that as well. We all do. I want to also talk to you about things beyond this next fiscal year. I'm sure you've heard things in the news about early voting. We don't know what exactly that will entail, but we do know that there will be additional costs if we're voting for at least 3 additional days. We don't know how many polling places. We don't know how the policies and procedures of that will work yet. So I just let you know that we are going to all the conferences and getting all the information that we can, so that as soon as we know, we can pass it along to you. We also know that we are nearing the end of the life expectancy of our tabulators. We started using those in 2007, and we got to see the new tabulators that LHS provides. They're excellent. They have additional backup memory in them. I think they look phenomenal. They're definitely a step up for us, but the federal government paid for our original tabulators. This expense may fall on us, each municipality. The good news is they are less expensive. The whole kit would be about $5,500 per unit. You know, I don't like to, it sounds like a lot maybe, but what we are now is critical infrastructure from the federal government. We spent a lot of time at conference learning about our role and our interaction with Homeland Security. Our job scope certainly has expanded tremendously since I started in the office. And I think that there are more eyes on the process than ever before. And I think that's a good thing. And I think that anything that we can use to make sure that elections are fair and open and accurately counted, we need. So I don't think that that's a very huge expense, and it is a future expense. Right now we have enough tabulators and we have enough parts to keep running with what we have. And they are also very good, and they're also very accurate. Just a couple other things. Postage, we've kept our same request, but we've already had to make a transfer into the postage account. And I'm worried that going forward, we're going to have to ask for more money, so please remember that next year when we're before you. We also have started on redistricting already. Some of you may have been around. I know Alderman Smith worked closely with us about 8 years ago. We've already begun drawing up maps so that when the census is done and the state can start drawing the lines, we have the maps and the information to get into our system so people are voting in the right districts. So all of that stuff is going on. I think now we can open it up for questions unless you have anything else. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Carrie and Deborah. Any questions for the registrars? We got all three hands going up. Okay, we'll start off with Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Carrie and Deb. How are you doing? Just to clarify, I know you said something about we having a lot of tabulators. The tabulators are what?
The voting machine, it's the voting machines that you actually put your ballot into. We currently have 23. So we would need to replace 23 and additional ones for early voting or whatever.
At approximately $5,500 a unit? Thank you.
Alderman Gaynor, do you have a question?
That was my question,
Oh,
but
good.
a follow-up question.
Alderman Vecchiarelli.
Well, wait, I have more.
Oh, you have more?
One more.
Okay.
Can you run both tabulators? Do you have to have all new ones, or can you run some of the current ones and like slowly integrate them over the years?
Well, that's exactly what we did with the memory cards. We sort of did a rolling stock, if you will, where we replaced failing memory cards every year until we were completely new. I would suggest that we could do that same thing so that it wasn't a one-time large fee, but over time began to replace them. And yes, we could do that. You're welcome.
Alderman Vecchiarelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. Currently, with the budget that we have in front of us, will that be enough to cover the April election?
Yes, that's how we budget it that way. If there were some unforeseen changes or things that would require more money, we would have to ask for something out of contingency if that happened. But yes, we believe that we could stay within the budget.
And then one other question, the 23 tabulators that we have. So it's possible that we won't have to buy new ones, but simply buy 23 new memory cards?
No, I'm sorry. I was using that as an example of how we replaced memory cards that were failing over time. They had a new memory card that was better. And so slowly, every year, we bought 4 or 5 or whatever we could afford in the budget. And I would suggest that we do the same thing. As soon as the new tabulator is available for purchase, we buy 2 or 4 and begin to replace the older tabulator with the new one.
What's the difference between the old and the new?
One of the biggest differences is that it has 2 memory cards, so that if there were a memory card failure, there's a backup memory card taking results as well. I've never seen a memory card fail that we weren't aware of it and able to change it during an election, but that's something that we wouldn't have to even do anything about. The other thing is the LCD screen that tells a voter if they've overvoted, voted for 4 aldermen instead of 3 in the case of a municipal election. The screen is larger and it's more user-friendly so that the voter understands exactly where the error is on their ballot, and it gives the voter the option of just leaving it as it is or getting the ballot back. You're welcome.
Any more questions for the elections? I'm sorry, for Registrar of Voters? Seeing none, we'll move on to elections. While you're sitting there.
Obviously, we all work together on this. So, you know, we've been here before. I don't have any additional comments, but would you like to say?
Well, as you can see, we did ask for 130, and we had our reasons for doing that. Last year, we did run into a situation where we had to go for finance board for an increase. But just to let you know, you look at the municipal election, and it's really not just about the municipal election coming up this year. It's also about the presidential primaries. So during this time, not only will we be having a municipal election in November, we will be having primaries, probably, most likely, for both parties in April of 2020. So that is the reason that we are asking for $105,000.
Questions for Elections Department? Alderman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to our city clerk and our registrars, you know, you guys more than anyone deal on all three levels of government, and particularly now with a lot of emphasis on elections, and I think you touched on it, Carrie, you're working with Department of Homeland Security, you're dealing with the Secretary of State's office, you're dealing with local interests here. And all of these complexities are compounded by the fact that there's new requirements almost every election cycle. I know primaries are always a big part of this, but in terms of some of the other things you put down, and not to go back to the last account, but you put down amount of money for transportation, travel, and so forth. How much time do you spend just keeping up on all of the new requirements, both the registrars and the city clerk, about all the election laws and regulations?
Well, both departments go to 2 conferences a year, but that doesn't include the ongoing. I mean, I have a New Haven County clerk that I go to 4 times a year, and we're always discussing not only clerk issues, but the election issues. It's mostly election issues that we're talking about. I know Carrie talked a little bit about early voting. It's probably going to happen. They have to take a vote on it. It's going to be on the ballot as a question this coming November. 2020, I'm sorry. And with that being said, it's because a constitutional thing has to be changed in there. So that's the reason that it has to be put on the ballot as a question. It's also going to be on the ballot about no excuse absentee, which is going to be a further, I don't want to use the word burden, but there's a lot of work that goes into absentee voting, a lot of work. And so to put no excuse, meaning that you don't have to be sick, you don't have to be away, you just don't want to go to the polls that day, you don't have to have a reason. And to process an absentee ballot takes a very long time. It's not like going in the little circles and putting in there's a lot of paperwork that goes through all of those procedures, and a lot of manpower in the office. So, and as far as early voting goes, we don't know what departments, but the last time we went to listen to the Secretary of State, we were all there. We went to a forum in West Haven, and she's not just talking about during regular office hours. She's talking about Saturdays and Sundays before election. So that means overtime for staff, and opening up our facilities, which would further be custodial fees. There's probably police too. I don't know how it's going to work, but it's just more and more financial burden on our municipalities.
And just in terms of our training, we're both certified, and we went to UConn and got our classes and took our final exam up in Hartford, and we do 8 hours of continuing education each year, as well as 3 to 4 hour moderator training to keep that certification active. And as Joanne pointed out, we go to county meetings quarterly, and we go whenever the secretary is nearby and giving a speech, we go, so that we're always aware of things that are on the horizon, and educating ourselves as to, and thinking about, I mean, we've already thought about ways to prepare, always do EDR better and to prepare for early voting or no-fault absentees, whatever comes down at us.
Thank you all. Thanks for all you do. I appreciate it.
Any more questions pertaining to elections? Alderman Vecchiarelli.
So again, the 130,000 that you had asked for, and what the mayor and the finance board is allowing is 105. That could be a problem with the presidential primaries. We might not have enough money.
Well, yes, it's going to be very, very close at that amount. If there are no problems, if one of us doesn't get sick and we have to hire someone to do what we do, or however, you have to hire people to do the work, and that's what it comes down to. When there's an issue with the ballot and we have to reprint, that's what happened to us last November. We were worried that the Constitution Amigo Party had a candidate withdraw, but we had already printed the ballots. We were waiting for the new candidate. We may have had to reprint all of the ballots. We worked very closely with the printer to make sure that he gave us a starting number to do absentees, and we were like watching the clock tick, if you will, so that, because there's only a certain amount of time for him to print all the ballots and get them out to all the cities and towns. And luckily they replaced the candidate and we got them all printed and we got them in time and nothing had to be reprinted. But things like that get thrown at us, and that 105 will not be enough.
In addition, we would have had to reprogram the memory cards. This is the thing, it's the unknowns. I mean, if there's, like she said, if there's no problems, we're golden. But if you start, we had a 90% turnout, we had ordered our ballots, and then we had so many new voters. So now we're not even sure 90% turnout of ordering of the ballots is going to be enough. We might need more ballots. It could be a 2-page ballot because there were so many candidates. So that's double the cost of the ballot right there because you had to go to 2 pages. I mean, it's just things like that we're just never sure of. That it's always nice to have the money. We promise we won't spend it if we don't need it, but
Or we'll come back.
Or we come back, but it's right in the middle of when everything is going on and we have all these deadlines to meet, and now we got to come and ask for more money, or that's all. But we're not complaining, we're just stating the facts.
But for example, early voting, is that a 2 or 3 month in advance type? What's the window there?
The only thing we know right now is that it's a minimum of 3 days prior to the election is what the Secretary of the State is recommending. That, as Joanne said, could be a Saturday or a Sunday before the election. It could be the 5 working days before the election, the prior week. We just don't know yet what that's going to entail. But Joanne also pointed out that what if there's a municipal primary? That happened, I don't know, now 6 years ago. Unexpectedly, there was a municipal primary. That's also a factor that would make that budget, very difficult to stay within. But fingers crossed. Thank you.
Any more questions? Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess as we meet with our directors and professionals within the departments and the people who know what they're doing and what kinds of monies they need, I think, ladies, you don't have to worry about it. You either pay now or you pay later. You're going to do the job. So if we can't take your recommendations and use it in good stead and make sure that the budget is an honest and transparent budget, then you're going to get paid either way. So don't worry about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions pertaining to elections? Seeing none, we'll move on to City Clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Debbie.
Good evening.
Any questions pertaining to City Clerk?
May I just make a couple of comments?
Sure.
Do you mind? First of all, thank you for letting me present in front of you tonight. I'm Joanne Rurg, if you don't know me. But my budget is pretty flat. There was only one area that I asked for an increase, and that was in my seasonal help. She basically, there was a woman prior to her when I came into office, and she since left for a full-time job. when I hired Alice, I had to reduce the number of hours to have her in the office in order to bring her up to an $11 an hour increase, because our prior seasonal was getting 10. So my budget never increased from that, and this year I asked for $1 an hour. The only foreseeable problem, and I think that it's almost $12 an hour for someone who is been with me for 3 years, is a little low, but she will take it, I'm sure. Problem is if the state does go for the minimal increase to $15, then this will not cover me in the budget. I know that it's not automatically going to go up to that $15. It will gradually go up, but even if it starts at $13, it's still not going to be enough in my budget for it. But we'll fix it. We'll figure it out. I also am having 2 retirements in my office this year, and both ladies will be going in June. So I am going to need to have some kind of coverage, especially during our dog season and our election season, and just to keep our office open during lunch hours. We always want to keep it open for the public, especially during lunch, because that's when people come in there. They're on their lunch hour. So I just wanted to express the different challenges that I am facing this upcoming year, and I'd be happy to answer any questions for you.
Any questions for City Clerk's Department? Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to City Clerk. So the 2 positions, the retirees, they're leaving in June?
Yes.
So those are positions that I assume are posted already and interviewing?
No, they have not been posted.
When is that happening?
I don't know. In fact, I was going to schedule, hopefully, a meeting with the mayor to discuss what will be on for our department.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions for the City Clerk? Seeing none, thank you, Joanne.
Thank you.
Next department is the Board of Assessment Appeals that I skipped over. Page 29. I don't see anybody here. Anybody have any questions? Mr. Mayor?
If you have a question, either Peter or I can answer those.
Anyone have any questions for the Board of Assessment Appeals? Don't see any. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for offering that. Next department on our agenda is Public Works Office, page 63.
Good evening, Chairman and the rest of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you to speak about our budget. I know you've heard a lot of testimony tonight, so I'm just opening up to questions if anyone has any questions about any individual departments in the DPW.
Thank you, Chris. Anyone have any questions pertaining to the Public Works Office? I don't see any. Alderman Smith.
I've been asked a lot of questions tonight. Good evening, Director Saley, Steve. Just so I understand something here, the Assistant Director of Public Works is you, Steve, right? You hold that position and you are paid that position, and that is as of last year, right? Was since the last budget.
Well, right now I'm the acting
right,
assistant, and I'm still the open space and natural resource agent, and I'm being paid a stipend, a portion of that acting assistant director position.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions pertaining to Public Works Office? Alderman Beccarelli.
Yes, good evening. You picked up one position, am I correct in saying that? Yeah.
That would be correct.
Could you tell me, what is that position?
So it's a construction project manager that would oversee construction projects throughout the city.
Any more questions pertaining to Public Works Office? Seeing none? Seeing none, we'll move on to Highway Parks. Department 4421, page 65 through 68. Any question pertaining to highway or parks? Alderman Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. I see for what the department requested and what the mayor is recommending and the finance board is recommending for the recreational area upkeeps and the ball field upkeep. Could you talk about what basically you're requesting the money for, what services might not be able to happen now if the mayor recommendation, finance board recommendation is followed?
Sure. Working with the recreational director, the city has increased the usage of their fields, and our fields are getting fatigued. And I asked for a little bit extra money so that we'd have the opportunity to do some major renovations on some of the buildings, some of the recreational areas. In addition, we're taking care of more fields than we ever have. The Orange Ave field is one of them. And also now the recreational part would be the splash pad pickleball, so there's more needs throughout the city.
Any more questions pertaining to highway parks? Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the director. Are all these positions filled? Sorry.
No, they're not all filled.
How many are not filled, or do we plan on filling them, or?
Our goal would definitely be to fill them. Presently, we have a number of job recs that have been signed by the mayor. One of the issues we have right now is with the munis transition, which everyone's aware of, the Human Resources Department has been intimately involved with that transition. So filling positions has been a challenging task for that department. In addition, they've lost 2 people to take other jobs in other fields.
A follow-up, Mr. Chairman. Would it be safe to say then, so if you've been getting by without that staff and you're looking to add another staff, would it be safe to say we can eliminate maybe 2 positions to add that 1 position?
Well, I believe if you look at the budget, Alderman Gurman, we did eliminate 2 positions throughout the departments. One was in solid waste and one was in wastewater. So the net result is a savings to the city, even with that new position. And as everyone knows, at least everyone at Public Works knows, there's a lot of demands in the city that people don't normally see. And we want to be responsive to the residents, and to not fill some of these, what I believe are critical positions, would be not in the best interest of the city.
So just to clarify, so what positions were eliminated?
There was a position in solid waste, a truck driver laborer, and there was also a position in wastewater, truck driver laborer.
Thank you.
Any more questions pertaining to highway parks? Seeing none, we'll open up under building maintenance, page 69 through 71. Alderman Gurman, your microphone is on. No problem. Anybody have any questions for the engineering department? Alderman Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there was the line item for stormwater testing, state mandate. That fund was considerably dropped, and the state mandated testing seems like something we would need to complete. Is there going to be an issue with the what's currently being recommended?
We're hoping that through our SCROG program, through the SCROG 10-town committee that we're a member of, that we're going to be able to leverage some of that and help us save some of the monies that we originally put into it. Just so everyone at the board knows, this MS4 is a requirement that started this year. It has about 5 years to fully implement, but there's a lot of challenges. We put money in to be proactive, and the mayor asked us if we could just take some of it out, and that he would, if we needed it, we would find the money somewhere in the budget.
Any more questions pertaining to the engineer department? Hearing none, we'll move on to general garage, page 74. Anyone having any questions pertaining to general garage? Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Mr. Saley and Steve.
Good evening.
Just looking at line item under vehicle equipment up to 584,335, you requested 550,000 and it was reduced by 200,000. Can you kind of explain why?
Yeah, so the historical level, previous to the last 5 or 6 years, they've budgeted about 325 to 350, but we've exceeded that every year. Some of the money we've taken out of our town road aid component to fix some of the plow vehicles. Our vehicle fleet, the heavy equipment fleet component is an older fleet, so we have a lot more wear and tear. We also have a number of trash trucks now that have gone through their useful life, and we really should be replacing a little bit earlier. So there's more repair work. It's like the old adage: do you fix an old car, or do you buy a new one? And it's a balance.
So the point is, you asked for $550,000 to do exactly what you just said.
Yep.
And then you're going to be, the finance board and the mayor's recommendation was $350,000, kind of cutting $200,000 out of what you just said.
Yes.
And are you going to do it, make it?
Our goal is to always try to work within our budget. Sometimes there'll be some hardships, but we'll have to make some.
But working within your budget, but how about working within this budget? You're going to be able to.
Well, this is my budget, so
350.
There's opportunities within the town aid account to offset some of the costs that typically I'd rather keep in town aid to do paving and other works, but we balance that with this account.
Okay.
Any more questions pertaining to general garage? Yes, Alderman Gaynor. I'm gonna call you Jeff. Alderman Gaynor.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. I see added to operational expenses GPS subscription. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So we started a GPS subscription about 2 years ago. We used it for about a year. We weren't really happy with it. We canceled that contract, and we've been working with a number of vendors. We have it down to 2 right now that we believe that we'll be awarding that shortly. So that will be going into effect, and then it's a decision with the mayor, the other department heads, how many other departments will have GPS in their vehicles.
What exactly would that do? What benefit is that for the vehicles?
It does a lot of things. Number one, in an emergency, it gives us an idea of where our employees are, especially for us. The public works is out in all types of storms and events. It gives us a maintenance component, so if your engine light goes on, it will actually record it when you come into the garage and tell us what's going on. It gives us idling reports. It gives us hard stops, quick stops. It gives us speeding reports. It's really a beneficial. We had a number of times where people have told us that when we had the operational one, that we were plowing, at an excessive speed. When we went back to the GPS, it showed that we were going 15 miles an hour. It also gives us, like I said, a breadcrumb effect, so we know where our drivers are, say for a snow event. or for trash. So if someone calls and says, hey, my street hasn't been picked up yet, we can look at our GPS and go, the street just hasn't been picked up, as opposed to, can you go out and look at your trash and make sure? Because sometimes drivers reroute themselves. So it's a very beneficial. I think anyone that's put GPS in any fleet is seeing a fairly significant savings through the GPS programs. And they've come down tremendously in price. When we started, 3+ years ago, it was anywhere between $25 and $50 a vehicle, and it's come down substantially.
Any more questions pertaining to general garage? Alderman Vitale.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, to you people at the front table. It just seems like the differences between the cuts and what you requested are significant. Maintenance equipment, another $15,000. GPS system from 25 to 15,000. Again, the equipment 200,000. Just looking at this, I mean, how do you get a system, a GPS system at 25,000? Then you're going to go out and get a new one, and we know a new one's going to cost 15,000. You already bought it.
So when we originally talked about, to be specific to GPS, as I was saying, the GPS was substantially more. And then the question is, how much of the fleet do you want to have? Do you want every vehicle with GPS? That would be our goal. But sometimes you have to make decisions. An example, maybe land use, we won't put GPS on. Maybe some of the other vehicles, MIS, we won't put GPS on, but maybe the frontline vehicles that we have, they will all be GPS. All our equipment will be GPS. So with that savings, with not maybe doing the whole fleet, but also our savings going from, $35 to, $20 a vehicle, I believe we can get that done.
So help me understand, if all vehicles don't have GPS, is this going to be a problem of, quote, discrimination within the union, saying these guys have GPS, you can follow them and you can tell us every move they make, and some of these other guys are not on GPS and you don't know where they are? Or, how does that figure in the scheme of things?
Well, I would answer that question. Police have GPS. Board of Ed has GPS. There's been no issues, and we haven't. We've had it for a year, but then we eliminated it. So there's been divisions within the city that have had it, and other divisions that haven't. I'm not the city attorney, so I don't want to answer the legal question. I'm just saying, past practice or the precedent has been that not everyone's had it.
But I understand that not every department has it. But if you have a department that has certain vehicles within the department, let's say garbage collection. In other words, do I misunderstood you by saying that all the trucks will have GPS on it? If you do have GPS, all those garbage trucks, all the recycling trucks, or are they just going to phase them in and have a few have them?
Yeah, so let me respond to that. Every garbage truck would have GPS. Every plow truck would have GPS. Every building maintenance truck. We internally have about 70 vehicles that we would be mandatory to get on. But then there's other departments that have expressed an interest to have GPS. So we'll work that out, and I believe that through, maybe next year we'll come before you if we find out we need more, and we'll grow that request, and we'll have a better explanation for what we need.
So either the department will have it or it won't have it?
Yes.
Any more questions pertaining to general garage? Alderman Gaynor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I look at the salaries for general garage, it looks like they haven't increased.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, if I may answer that question, this is because the Public Works contract expired or is expiring on June 30th. And so the increase is budgeted for in the benefit salary reserve, which is in another section of this budget.
So does that mean that at some point during the next fiscal year, we should expect an increase in this line item?
So typically what will happen is we normally start contract negotiations either January before the July 1st or sometime around now, and it carries over. Last contract, I think we finished in February of the following year, and then there's retroactive pay. As Peter or DC explained, there's a fund that they put a reserve where they guess, I shouldn't say guess, they estimate how much that increase will be, and they put it in that, and then it will get adjusted. And the next year on the budget, that will automatically be in it for you guys to review.
Any more questions pertaining to general garage? Seeing none, move on to the next department, solid waste. Solid waste is page 76.
So, Chairman Beccarelli, if I could just, I'm sorry, Chairman Vitro, if I could just explain one thing.
Sure.
In account 589950, we're going to have some challenging issues. When this budget process started, we anticipated that we'd have some costs associated with recycling disposal. Previous to June or July of this year, we were getting $20 a ton. Presently, right now, we're paying $53 a ton to get rid of the same material, so that's a $73 a ton change. Not only in the revenue part, because the city used to get the $20 a ton, which was about $80,000 a year, but now we're paying presently a commodity market, which is a market that adjusts monthly, and we're paying $53 a ton. So there'll be some issues with that coming up at the end of this year, I believe, and also the following year.
Thank you for that.
But Mr. Chairman, out of that same line item, we may have some savings. Again, we're finalizing the numbers right now in terms of the operation of our transfer station. So we are hoping to find some savings out of that account as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any more questions pertaining to solid waste? Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Director Saley. So a couple years ago, we bought some beautiful new one-arm bandit trucks to handle our solid waste and implement a recycling program. I mean, that's kind of taking a hit now, but I see our solid waste numbers keep going up, and that was supposed to go way down. I don't understand what's going on now, but the past year, it seems like it's been going up. So one question is, yeah, that was one, but also we were looking to eliminate quite a few positions. Drivers with the one-armed bandits, so a truck going from 3 people down to 1 person, and you're just looking to eliminate one position. Have others been eliminated, or are they being repurposed, these people, or why do we still have so many people?
So contractually, when we started the old contract, we weren't allowed to do this. Through the new contract that started over 3 years ago, we got language in the contract that let us adjust some of these routes. That was 3 years ago, and 3 years ago we had almost 31 employees in the department. So over 3 years, we've lost. We're gonna, as of this year, we're gonna have lost or reduced that department by 7 positions, which I think is a tremendous amount in a 3 or 3.5 year period. And that was through the support of the alderman and the mayor's office. And we're going to continue to look at cost savings in that area. One of the issues you have is there are a number of employees that have a number of years, which equates to a 5-week vacation schedule. So you can't cut it so thin that you don't have enough employees when people ask for time off and vacations and other things. Plus, you always have to anticipate putting people out of work for any other number of reasons. So I think that we're slowly going through the attrition process and reducing that, and we'll continue to do that. We've done that without any layoffs, which I think is a very positive thing for the city.
So just one quick follow-up. So how many do you anticipate, like what's the ideal number once we get to where we want to be with the one-armed bandits?
That really depends on what the city's looking to do. I envision us being more aggressive with recycling in regards to glass, organics, paper, cardboard, and maybe collecting recycling every week as opposed to every 2 weeks, in regards to doing maybe cardboard 1 week and mixed paper the next. So I think as a whole, it's tough to say where would be the ideal amount, but I think where we're at now, maybe 1 or 2 positions lower, but again, we want to try to compost more. We want to try to, you talk about the weights that you bring up, Alderman Gurman, and you're 100% right, city waste, and 45% of the city waste by weight is organics that we could compost. So I think the city has an opportunity to look at repurposing some of these employees in another avenue and saving the city money over the long term.
Alderman Veccarelli.
Thank you. In regards to the 589950, city waste removal cost, going from $20 a ton to $53 a ton. I mean, is it possible that we're going to double that $2 million?
No. So we do about 42 to 43 thousand tons a year. So it would never be that. I mean, I shouldn't say it would never be that much, but you're talking at worst case at the present market, it would be about $220,000 more. But as the mayor spoke about, there is going to be, we anticipate some savings in the transfer station. We went out to bid, and one of the bids came in, I wouldn't say substantially lower, but lower. So there is some savings there. And I'm hoping in the next year, what we're all hoping is that the commodity market over in Japan and also internally, domestically, will improve, or we'll do more recycling of recyclables in the States.
Any more questions pertaining to solid waste? Seeing none?
Sorry, one
Alderman
more.
Berman.
The condo reimbursement we talk about every year. Can you explain that, why we keep reimbursing all these condos?
So that was before my time, but the understanding was that the city reimburses condos either the actual cost or the factor that the city uses, whichever is lower. And I would let Peter speak a little bit more about it, but that's right, Peter?
Yes, that's correct.
And just to follow up on that, so when is that paid? Because I see in this past year, nothing's really been paid yet. Is that paid at the end of the year, or? Sorry, guys, to you, Mr.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it's paid throughout the year. The mayor's office sends the letter on an annual basis, but there are rules and guidelines to be followed. One of the key things is that they have to use an approved hauler. So our accounting division reviews the request for reimbursement, and if for some reason the reimbursement request does not fulfill all of the criteria, it will be sent back to the requester. But it's not at one set period of time that the payments go out. It's as the reimbursement requests come in.
Any more questions pertaining to solid waste? Seeing none, move on to the next department, wastewater. Page 101 through 105. Any questions regarding wastewater? Alderman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris, who's the wastewater superintendent?
Lindsay King.
And when that was Ed Kozlowski, and he stayed on additional time. Is this a recent development I'm just unaware of?
Lindsay started about 5 months ago, and Ed Kozlowski is actually still helping out the city. He's going to be the acting foreman at the Beaverbrook plant, responsible. He has a Class 4 license. We're actually just advertise that. We're in the process of advertising that to go out statewide to see if we can get a candidate. Ed has been very beneficial to the city, helping us out by keeping us in compliance. And he, once this position hopefully will be filled, he'll go off into his retirement.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people retiring in all of our discussions here tonight. Ed was the superintendent of the wastewater division in the city, is that correct?
That is correct. He was there for about 3.5 years.
Thank you.
Any more questions pertaining to wastewater? Hearing none, we'll move on to the last department tonight, be the sewer commission. Any questions pertaining to the sewer commission? That's page 98, anyone looking for the sewer commission? Any questions pertaining to the sewer commission? I don't see any. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Saley, thank you very much for answering all our questions, and thank you for the great job you're doing for the city of Milford.
Thank you very much.
Is there a motion to recess for the next budget meeting on April 24th?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
As a reminder, Wednesday night, we're not meeting until 7:30. Right? Got it? Good.
I made.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to recess till April 24th at 7:30. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're in recess. Thank you very much, everyone.